It was almost Christmas, and things were getting busy. I had to start buying presents for my family. I was almost finished shopping, but I still needed to get a present for my little cousin. She's not hard to shop for since she's 4. She likes things like Peppa Pig and My Little Pony. She really liked, and I say liked for a reason, Max and Ruby. When I decided to go looking for a present, I figured Max and Ruby DVD would have been perfect, since she watched it on a daily basis. However, Christmas meant that a lot of the DVD stores were sold out. I went looking on eBay, but I figured I couldn't trust the condition the DVDs were in. So I was stuck in a rut for a while, until a package arrived. I was at home, still searching for a DVD, until I heard the sound of something being pushed into my letterbox. I got a hold of it before my dog did, and took a look at the package. It was wrapped fairly badly with what looked like grease marks and stains on it. Naturally, like anyone would, I decided to open the package. Inside was something that's hard to explain. It was a Max and Ruby DVD, but I've never seen one quite like it before. It was like a little kid had drawn on the front cover with a marker. The title was just Max and Ruby, with what looked like a poorly drawn illustration of Max and Ruby on the front. There were no names or anything, but on the back it had a list of 4 episodes, all with blunt titles. Episode 0001, Episode 0002, Episode 0003, and Episode 0004. I gave the DVD a watch over, and to my surprise, the episodes were all in perfect quality, and they seemed to have no flaws. It seemed like it was just a real DVD, but with a homemade cover. The only thing that I thought was odd was the episode selection screen. The episodes had names, but they were all called Max and Ruby 1, with the numbers being changed as it went down the list. The selection screen was a plain white, with the black text of the episode list, and nothing else. After giving it some thought, I decided to change the cover to something a little nicer by printing out a real DVD cover that I found on Google, and I tracked down the names of the episodes so that they were labeled right. I left the selection screen alone because I figured it was self-explanatory. Christmas went by, and things were fine. I gave my little cousin her DVD, and she was happy with it all the way through Christmas. But that was only because she hadn't watched it yet. On Boxing Day, the family had gone out for a meal, and left me to babysit my cousin. I figured now was a good time to put the DVD on for her. I put the DVD in, and I let it play, while I was in the kitchen eating my dinner. From what I could hear, she watched episodes 1 to 3 so far. I was just about to finish off my noodles when I heard my cousin screaming from the other room. I dropped everything, ran to the living room, and I saw my cousin curled up on the floor, screaming. I looked up at the TV, and I felt my heart in my throat. What I caught was a glimpse of what was one of the most disturbing things I've ever seen. It was a frame of Max and Ruby standing next to each other in complete darkness. But what made it so horrible was their lack of faces. They lost their noses and mouths, and their eyes were replaced with big, hollow holes. The colors were a disgusting blood red, and there was faint static in the background. The sound was replaced with what sounded like the Max and Ruby theme playing backwards, with the static mixed in with it all. It was on the screen for at least 20 seconds before it went black and the DVD turned off, which was weird because DVDs usually don't turn off by themselves. I was able to calm my cousin down, telling her that it wasn't real and she just had a nightmare because she'd fallen asleep in front of the DVD. However, I knew that it was completely real. My parents called me and they told me that they were going to be out for the rest of the night. So, I figured that this was an opportunity to look at the DVD a little bit more closely. I didn't mention to them, and as soon as I hung up, I grabbed the DVD and stuck it into my laptop. As soon as it loaded, I noticed that episode 0004 had been replaced with R.I.P. Mom and Dad, which sent a deep chill down my back. Since my cousin was now asleep, I plugged in my earbuds so she could sleep without having to hear any of it. Normally, an episode of Max and Ruby would have 3 short stories, but this episode only had 1. It actually started off quite lighthearted. Max and Ruby were playing tag in the garden, and their parents were on the porch watching them play. However, something was off. The sound was playing in reverse, and the parents' faces were sad. A film grain became present, which grew worse and worse every second. Hand to the mother and father, and in a voice of deep sorrow, the father spoke. "It's such a shame," he sighed. It then cut to the sound of static and a loud scream, followed by the sound of 2 people choking, while the mother and father mumbled to each other in the background, but it was impossible to understand them. The sounds were so realistic it made me almost physically sick. The screen cut to white for a split second, and then the screen transitioned over to Max and Ruby. They were standing in front of what looked like a gravestone, which was labeled RIP, Mommy and Daddy. Neither of them had faces. At this point, there was no sound apart from faint static. The scene remained on the screen for about a minute and a half before it cut away to black. Then the scene changed again, now showing Max and Ruby sitting in Ruby's room, while undecipherable whispering became apparent and grew louder and louder over time. Both of them were sobbing uncontrollably while transparent clips of a murder playing in reverse flashed on screen. The father pulled a knife out of his neck, picked up a bloody axe, and tucked away the corpse of the mother before she came back to life and walked up the stairs. By this point, the whispering became louder and louder, and more of the whispering voices disappeared, till it came down to just one voice. It was a rather angry woman's voice, who said, "Burn in hell." I was absolutely horrified. The scene changed again. Showed Max sitting in his room. He was standing on a chair with a noose hanging from the ceiling. He brought it around his neck. The scene faded to black and the static got louder. It cut to Ruby walking in on her brother. She let out a gut-twisting scream. The camera panned to her face as the sound of the chair being kicked and the same choking from before began to play. The picture of Ruby's face stayed on screen for a good 5 minutes. This time her eyes turned to those same gaping holes. Ruby then started crying as before. The static grew louder until it drowned out the sound of her cries. The scene cut to black, but the loud static stayed. When the screen returned, Ruby was sitting now on her own, gardened by the two gravestones. One was labeled RIP, Mommy and Daddy, and the other, RIP, Brother. She started to look at the camera with glowing blue pupils, and she spoke to me. Whoever's watching this is because you never watched any of me and my brother's episodes. So, one of these days, you will regret this. The screen faded to black. At this point I felt sick and I was shaken. But the episode seemed to have come to an end at last, and the Max and Ruby theme song played slowly in reverse. I was about to eject the DVD when the same image came up like it did on the TV. This time there was text above the two rabbits. It said, "Death is our only release." There's no credits or anything else. It stayed on this image for a few seconds before the DVD finally popped out of my laptop. I sat there trying to contemplate what had happened. In my shock and fear, I made the decision to try to break up the DVD into as many pieces as I could before I shoved all the pieces down the drain. Thankfully, I kept a few screenshots saved to my laptop. The next couple of days went by without anything unusual happening. I had a couple of nightmares about the DVD, but that was it. My cousin went back home along with the rest of the family. It was late at night, and my parents went out for dinner again. I heard the sound of something getting posted through the door. At this point, the DVD had almost left my mind, since I didn't really talk about it. But then, it all came flooding back when I looked down at the letter in front of me. I unfolded it. It read, "Death is our only release."